Alright guys, TacticalRab back again today. Hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far. Rostermania is back in full force with up to 5 teams potentially changing as a ripple effect from OpTic blowing it up officially. Dashy seems to have practically confirmed last night. He's dropped, he's gone, his tenure in OpTic is over. Arcitys might be his replacement, but the Pred situation is now the interesting one, with OpTic potentially buying Pred out of Surge. What does that mean? Will they even let that go through? And what could the full roster potentially be, and all the implications for elsewhere in the league? Hit the like button if you enjoy, subscribe if you're new as always, I would greatly appreciate it. We're on the verge of 89,000 subs, we could get to 90k at the end of the year the way this is going right now, so if you guys make sure you don't want to miss anything over the coming days, and there will be a lot, hit the sub button, noti bell, all that type of good stuff, and you won't miss a damn thing. Let's dive straight into things. This was the OpTic Texas team at the start of the season. These were some of their performances, of course, after the first major, but it does seem inevitable at this point that a change will be coming. You know, Scump was even doing an impression of iLLeY the other day, which is a little bit confusing just because it seems like iLLeY is also going to get dropped from this team. Just wanted to mention one quick thing on Gizmo, and this is the kind of discussion about the implications of this OpTic move. OpTic are changing it, therefore Seattle might change, therefore LAG are probably going to change, and therefore there's going to be a significant turnover of personnel within the league. And even Elevate Justin, that Gizmo was playing for Elevate, right? He says, "Going to miss you, brother, you killed it this past weekend," implying that Gizmo is effectively going to join a pro league team, whether that's on the sub bench, whether that's somewhere else, because some substitute players, as it stands for certain teams, are potentially going to get signed for other starting rosters as a result of all this chaos. So let's dive straight into this Dashy stuff then. I mean, firstly, they'll talk about was Arcitys, right? So Arcitys was streaming last night. Octane comes in the chat, a couple of guys pointed out to me to say, yo, congrats on OpTic, bro. Now, just because these are the present rumours that it's going to be Arcitys, it's going to be Pred, doesn't mean it's actually going to happen. There are complications to these deals. OpTic are obviously desperate for a significant change, and therefore these teams will ask a lot of money for these transitions, especially potentially in Arcitys' case, because he's on that 3-year deal. Pred is an interesting one just because his contract is up at the end of the season, and therefore there's a kind of two-way dynamic there. But well, last night it seemed to be official that Dashy is gone. We don't have anything like this from iLLeY as it stands, but OpTic Dashy, we saw yesterday actually, I mentioned that he hadn't changed his bio, and he still hasn't as it stands, but he has changed his name. So this used to be, if you guys watched yesterday's video, it used to say OpTic Dashy here. It now just says Brandon. So he's taken OpTic out of his name. OpTic's not in his bio anyway after he got dropped back in August, and then he got reinstated. So that is the latest update from that side. And then even Ronnie says from Scrimmintel shortly after this that he's heard rumours they're trying to make 2 changes, which makes sense, right? They wanted to make 2 changes in the off-season. If they were going to make a change, that's more than likely what was going to happen. And, you know, they were going to get rid of both players that they were trying to get rid of initially. Dashy and iLLeY both gone. So Arcitys potentially for Dashy, and then, well, they want to bring in someone for iLLeY. And that's not potentially going to be a flex player, but instead going to be someone else on the SMGs, and then Scump could run the flex. So Dashy then tweets this outright, the Fast and Furious, going their separate paths. Lots of likes on this one. Now, still, there is part of my brain that says, oh, they're just baiting, but I really don't think they are, because we thought in the off-season that they were just baiting. That wasn't bait. This is like less obvious bait, if it even is, especially given all the further reactions to this from Dashy. Like, look, if he's tweeting this, if he's changing his name, and they're just going to say, oh, just a joke, guys, we're running it back, after all the drama and the chaos and the internal struggles they're dealing with, and after the fact that clearly, to a certain extent, their chemistry is just shot. Like, there's just no way they don't make a move at this point. So it seems like after all this time Dashy is gone. I've got to say it's kind of crazy to me, because when Dashy was initially gone in the off season right before, I remember the comments and the reaction to it from the fans was like overwhelmingly negative, right? I remember reading the comments on the OpTic podcast they dropped the day that Dashy got dropped, and they were overwhelmingly like, wow, this is a terrible decision, don't get rid of Dashy. And when they did it at the time, I was like, well, look, Dashy was an MVP candidate last season, and they still were going to drop him for various reasons in and out of the game potentially, mostly out of the game as Rambo implied not that long ago. So comes into this game, it doesn't look as good individually. Like, it's kind of inevitable, right? But also I think it's kind of surprising how quickly, to a certain extent, the fans have turned on him from what we saw a few months ago. But then Formal replies, of course, great friends with Dashy at the Hex quarters, and Dashy says, appreciate you more than you know, bro. So, you know, that kind of gives the game away in that sense. And even then this from Dashy, which is like straight up revenge tour type stuff. So Nameless says, your journey towards the dark side will be complete, and then Dashy gives the Anakin Skywalker. So basically saying like, look, I'm coming for revenge, which is quite the quite the statement to make. And later today we'll talk about where Dashy could potentially go as a result of this, and what his revenge tour might look like, if anything at all. Because look, we know that the OpTic curse is a thing. The last several players that they've dropped, and even potentially coaches in the case of Sender, have gone on to win many things, if not just the World Championship straight up. So maybe that's what Dashy is looking for the remainder of this season. And even to mention this is his profile, and under his likes there's this tweet here from Sleazy aBeZy, who says, you know, wherever Dashy goes, that's the team I'm rooting for. Dashy been my favourite player since World War II. So kind of, again, implying by Dashy liking this, that it's a done deal. He's gone from OpTic. That is official. Now, with all this happening, everyone and their grandma decided to get on Twitter to try and bait about some impressions for this, and fair play to them, right? I kind of did the same thing. As Octane says, damn, you guys aren't going to believe the thing that I was just told behind closed doors that I feel the need to be fake about for impressions. But, you know, when pro players are saying, wow, this is crazy, wow, this is crazy, there probably is something pretty crazy going on, in fairness. Even if we don't know what it is, like when they're all doing it at the same time, it probably implies that something's happening, but they do like, you know, baiting around. Arcitys says the same thing, and then we even get this slasher eye, the kind of mind-blown face emoji, and the dude says, if what I'm hearing is true, then holy, this is crazy stuff. So, of course, Kroner's kind of retired from the leaking game, but he will hear things, and he will retweet and talk about stuff that other leakers have been discussing, and that's where it kind of begins. Even Boston Bean says, here we go, implying that, yes, something is seriously about to happen. And that thing that, well, seemingly is about to happen is not going to be Crim6 returning, although that would be a story for the ages, but rather Pred potentially leaving Seattle to come to the OpTic side. Even Crim was actually joking around about this himself, because people didn't really know what was going on at the time, because it felt like it was going to be minus Dashy plus Arcitys, but then surely you've also got to find an iLLeY replacement given the situation. We knew the Arcitys thing was potentially going to happen, but by no means guaranteed still as it stands. Like, they might not find a way to make this deal work. It's possible that it falls through. Things have happened like this in the past, and if they don't get Arcitys, they might have to try and get someone else. We'll talk about that later today also, but this is the key news then about Pred. So Scrumintel was hearing about this, and well, he comes up with a potential OpTic roster as it stands. Scump and Shotzzy, of course, that's going to be the duo that's going to stay. Then Arcitys rejoining Scump makes a fair bit of sense. The history they have on the Huntsman a few years ago, and you know, where Arcitys lies as a main AR for this team, brings more leadership to the lineup, and then Pred joining. Now, this really is quite something if this is true. So it's kind of been a bit of an open secret, I would say, that Pred was more than likely going to join OpTic at the end of this season. That seemed a likely possibility. Scump would retire, Pred would come in. That would make sense, because Pred at the end of this season is a free agent, right? He's an unrestricted free agent, kind of like how Shotzzy was, kind of like how Hydra was last season. His contract is done with Seattle at the end of this year. He will be free to go. So in Seattle's shoes, you've just got a good second place again with this team. You're thinking, well, OpTic are desperate for a change. They're coming knocking for Pred, and we can either sell him to them now for an actual buyout, or we've got to wait, you know, to the end of the season, and then he's going to walk to them for free. So from Seattle's point of view, yes, it's obviously an L losing Pred. You might be able to get a decent replacement. We'll see that too in a second. But look, they can at least sell him for some money at this point, whereas they can't if they let him stay to the end of the season. Now, Pred also has a choice to make, right? And this is where the pulling power of OpTic really goes to show what's happening here, because I know that some people would say, well, you know, Pred should stay with Seattle, take the bag, build a better team over there. But like, OpTic is OpTic, right? They're the biggest fan base for a reason. Everyone really wants to be an OpTic at the end of the day. And look, if Pred has the opportunity to join OpTic, I don't think the way his career is going that he's going to just turn this down, because look, he's probably going to go there at some point anyway. Now, the other key point of this potential roster is, I mean, look, first of all, Shotzzy and Pred as an SMG duo, like, that is absolutely superb. And I'm really happy if this is the case, because I told you guys before the season started, I want to see Scump on an AR. I want to see him at least on a flex role, because we know how good Scump can be with the AR. When he was running that third M4 in the game at the start of this season, he was absolutely ridiculous a few weeks ago. Then when he was back on the second Vaznev, right, when it kind of became a 2 SMG meta again at the major, with the Scar now in effect, he wasn't quite as potent, and I'm sure he knows he can be so good on an AR. So if Scump's on the flex role, the second AR here effectively, with Shotzzy and Pred on the SMGs, like, that is just such a great combination. And then Arcitys rounding it out as the main AR with all the leadership and the experience that he has and the ability to know how to win, then, you know, it's obviously a great team on paper. Whether it happens, I don't know. Even Pred, of course, kind of talking about it here, sipping the tea and laughing all the attention up pretty much after everyone was talking about this, of course, last night. And even Dashy briefly liked this tweet before then unliking it. So there was a tweet here that said, this is talking about Pred, he has a contract expiring this year. If he told them he's not coming back, it makes sense to trade him now, get something in return such as cash. And you know, Dashy basically likes this tweet, it seems, and then unlikes it shortly afterwards. So yeah, what do you guys think about this potential roster? Now, of course, the further implication of this is, what happens the other way around? Like, if Pred is leaving Surge to join OpTic, like, you know, what does Surge do as a replacement there? Now, there's a few names being thrown around here, one of which was Johnny, formerly of Paris last season, that Zuma talked about, and I'm like, okay, surely they're not going to do that. I mean, fair enough, Johnny's a decent player, but like, he's not Pred. I mean, to replace Pred is going to be practically impossible, but nonetheless, you've got to try. Now, Wardy is another option, who some have said that this is not going to happen, but Wardy is currently the subliner's substitute player, right? right, on the New York team. And he's been considered up there with like Afro and some of the European guys the last few seasons as being kind of maybe the next up from the UK challenger scene, let's just say. And, you know, the likes of Pred and Hydra and Afro come from similar backgrounds over the last few years. So Wardy potentially to Surge would be a really interesting option. There's been some other names thrown around as well. I know that Asim has been talked about just because, you know, this is the ripple effect, right? OpTic make a change, therefore Surge might make a change, therefore London, who are already making a change, might then make an additional change with maybe Asim leaving. I don't know what's happening there, but that might be a potential consideration also. So as it stands then, this is what we have. The current rumour mill says Arcitys is joining OpTic. Now, as I say, both of these moves, they should have made these earlier, arguably. But then again, what do you guys think? If they did the blow up in the offseason, they got Cammy, they got Hydra. That was the rumoured roster. Is Cammy, Hydra, Scump and Shotzzy a better team than Arcitys, Pred, Scump and Shotzzy? I don't know. I think I like the latter one more, to be honest. Now, at the same time, they've got to pay a serious buyout for these guys. Like, Arcitys is not going to come cheap. Pred is not going to come cheap at all. But nonetheless, it's Scump last year. They've got to commit to it, right? There's also a thought in the back of my head, like with Scump obviously saying that he's going to retire at the end of this year. What does that mean for this team? Because when Scump does retire at the end of the season, do they then get Sib as well and then have Sib, Pred and Shotzzy to be, God, I mean, that's absolutely outrageous. Like, that trio to build around for the next several years, like, you know, that is quite the way to do it if OpTic wanted to. But at the same time, is there any world in which Scump teams with these guys says, damn, this environment's much better than what we had to deal with Dashy, let's just say, for the last couple of years. You know, team with Pred's pretty fun. I'm now on the flex. Let's say Scump's on the second AR and is absolutely loving life there. Maybe he's like, you know what, one more year, how bad can it be? If the team, you know, were to turn out pretty well. So that is the OpTic side. And then you've got the other side where Surge need to find someone, potentially Wardy or Johnny or maybe Asim, right? And then also LAG have to do something. There were initially some rumors that, let's say OpTic don't get Pred, maybe they can get Huke as well. I know that it's been in the past talked about, like even back in Cold War where Huke became available, Hex actually said on a podcast, I think it was maybe one of the OpTic pre-shows, that he was like, yeah, like when Huke was available, we had to at least consider getting him despite what situation they had at the time looking pretty good because, you know, Huke is Huke. Now, nowadays he doesn't necessarily carry the same value as he did before, but if they can't get Pred, like what's their alternative, right? Probably they still want another SMG, and to put Scump on the flex, which I do think is a good idea. And then you've got to figure out, which we have no idea as it stands, where the OpTic guys are going to go, because presumably Dashy and iLLeY are both gone. Will they go and team together somewhere? Will they go, let's say, to Los Angeles Guerrillas? And we'll talk about that a little bit more later on today. And even Gunner said last night, hello, old friends, we meet again, the Chicago Huntsman hoodie right here. And yeah, just like that, the boys are back with, of course, Gunners. Scump is on the left-hand side, Arcitys, and then Formula Envoy, that Huntsman team at the time. But, I mean, yeah, maybe Gunners. We always talked about Gunners being a good substitute for OpTic, potentially. But it doesn't seem like that is the case as it stands, but maybe an option in the longer term. So, yeah, and even this Mutineers thought was pretty funny. Doesn't matter what OpTic roster they've got, we shall be ready. But, yeah, very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comment section. Like, an absolutely chaotic day. Hopefully I've done my best job explaining exactly what happened last night and what the implications are for the future. But this is not going away anytime soon. Still many questions to be answered. Still no guarantee that what we see at the moment is actually going to manifest in reality. And make sure you hit the like button and subscribe if you have not already. Thanks for watching as always. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time.